Hello and welcome to day 5 of Radiology Residence Week. And today the capstone that we try and draw together some of the threads of subjects we've been talking about all during the week. The capstone is the radiologist's legal responsibility for the safety of the exam. Now, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in the week about the radiologist's duty to accurate and timely reporting of the results of a study, and there are legal implications associated with those, but many radiologists would be mistaken if they thought that that their legal obligation was just to the report. The fact is that your legal obligation begins with the patient, and while the patient is receiving a prescription examination, and X-ray, fluoro, CT, MR are prescription examinations in the States. While the patient is undergoing that radiological examination, the radiologist, the supervising physician, is that patient's physician for the exam, which means that you as the radiologist are legally responsible not only for accurate and timely interpretation of the results, but you are actually legally responsible for the administration of the exam and the safety of that situation. It is your patient. The exam is your examination in terms of ownership from a legal responsibility standpoint. The best analogy is the captain of the ship legal doctrine, which essentially says we hold the captain of a ship legally responsible for the actions of any of its crew. The captain is the fundamental legal head, if you will, of a crew. That principle got applied in medicine initially to surgeons, and that the surgeon was legally responsible for the outcome of a surgical procedure, even if there were, nurses or anesthesiologists. They may have individual responsibility, but ultimately the surgeon, as the person in charge of that patient care environment, is in effect the captain of the ship being the OR, the other clinical staff being the crew of that ship, but the surgeon, the lead surgeon for that procedure, is the captain of that ship. Now, translate that legal construct to radiology. Who is the captain of the ship during an MRI study? Who is the person who is responsible for the activity of that exam? Well, it's a prescription exam, may be referred by an oncologist, a neurologist, an orthopedic surgeon, but the exam is prescribed by the radiologist, as is contrast. We touched on that earlier. So if you are the physician who legally permits the exam to go forward, and you are the physician who interprets the results of that examination, you got pre, you got post, and we have to define who has legal responsibility in this space during the actual administration of the exam. Who do we think is most legally responsible, most clearly a direct line of responsibility? The person who essentially authorizes, prescribes the exam, the person who reads and interprets the exam. You notice nowhere in this is the referring physician. We haven't really talked about the technologist or the radiographer. In the US, the technologist is functionally the disembodied hands of the radiologist. They execute the orders of the radiologist for the delivery of approved patient care, but they don't make determinations about to give or not to give care independently. They may follow policies and procedures that are documented, but those should be reviewed by, authorized by a supervising physician if they pertain to clinical decision making. So essentially they're following an algorithm prescribed by the supervising physician. They are acting on the direction, even if it's just in print by policy, they are acting at the direction of the supervising physician. So the reason that this is the capstone that we want to talk in conclusion about the legal responsibility of the radiologist is because it is vitally important for every radiology resident as they are undergoing their training to not only appreciate the importance of accuracy and timeliness in reporting of results, but radiology residents need to know from the outset that your responsibility doesn't begin for an individual patient or an individual exam. Your responsibility does not begin when the report appears on your work list. Your responsibility for the care and safety of that patient while they're in the care of radiology or medical imaging, your responsibility starts the moment that that patient crosses the threshold into your department. And that includes the safe execution of the exam. As I've said previously this week, we don't expect radiologists, radiology residents to become weekend medical physicists or weekend technologists to be able to administer their own MRI studies. But what is really, in my opinion, necessary is to understand comprehensively sort of the bounds of the physician's role, the radiologist's role with respect to MRI safety. And take an active interest in making sure that your facility, your site, the locations you read for, even if they're 100, 1,000 miles away, that those sites administer time-tested, proven best practices with respect to patient care and MRI safety. I hope that the whole week's worth of RadRes information and best practices and hopefully points in constructive directions for your training. I hope that this has all been helpful to you, and we invite you to continue participating in the MRI safety group, sharing your thoughts, your questions, the things that you would like to explore a little bit more deeply. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for Radiology Resonance Week.